Episode of Real Talk Family Life, Building Shatterproof Families, one brick at a time. We're happy to see you on this evening, and we look forward to another interesting episode. Of course, produced and hosted by our home ministry or our host ministry, Faith Tabernacle in Trinidad and Tobago. So last week we covered time management, and in this week we're continuing discussions on time management, and we're actually doing some work tonight. So make sure you grab a pen, a book, or some paper and get ready to do some thinking, some reflection, and committing to perhaps shifting your time in the coming week. You also had some homework to do. So we're going to give you about 30 seconds to just remember where you have your paper about spending your time so that we can have discussions on that. So we're talking about time management. This is part 2 in an effort to build a legacy and live out our purpose, facilitated by time management and other things. So I encourage you to just pay attention, contribute, ask questions. We would be happy, apologies, to engage you all. We also want your feedback. So clap, give a thumbs up, share an emoji, comment in the chat if there's anything that resonates with you, if there's anything that's unclear to you, or if you have a question. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to have your participation. So tonight we have with us again, Reverend Dr. Roger Samuel, traumatologist. We have with us Rachel Thomas, executive coach and financial consultant. Pastor Griffith is going to be joining us, or Pastor Griffith is here, and Dr. Patricia Neff, who's going to be with us just for a short period in time, making a very brief contribution, but an important one on seeding time. So everyone, welcome. We did the introduction last night, but just unmute your mics and say good night as before we move on to the next segment, recapping time.
Well, good night, everyone. It's good to be here again. I'm looking forward to a tremendous session. I know that this particular topic stirs all of us because it causes us to look at our own time management and what occupy our time. So I'm so eager just to be here, just to learn. I'm here to learn as well because I too have to manage my time. So I'm glad to be part of this conversation.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here again. There's lots coming up with time management and other related topics. Today, I spoke a little bit about overcoming overwhelm on the radio. So it's all tying together, and I'm excited to be here again and to share and to learn myself as well. I always learn and glean things from every session that I attend or teach. So looking forward to another interesting and reflective night, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Hi, good evening. It is always good that we can find subjects that can relate to our lives, and I'm glad to know that as a church we can give you something to identify with. God bless you as we enjoy the evening together.
Hello, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, even though for a very short time. I teach this evening, so my time is pulled in two directions tonight. But I am so excited to be here. I love coming to these sessions and hearing the wonderful words of wisdom that comes from all the panelists. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. So to start tonight's topic, time management too, I found some interesting facts online. We all use our telephones. The stats say that of 8 telephone calls placed, 1 would be repeated because of missing information. If that's true, you can raise your hand, give a thumbs up, or you can post in the chat. Employees on average work the hardest from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. After 12 p.m., productivity dwindles. The average person has tried to have used 13 different methods for time management. At work, we typically check our emails 50 times and social media platforms 77 times per day. It's proven that 66% of people check their emails 7 days a week. 70% of people in one study use a to-do list to ensure they get all their tasks done. People who work in a messy or otherwise unorganized workspace tend to spend an hour and a half looking for misplaced items. employees on average spend 31 hours per month in meetings. This means they spend an hour a day in a meeting. And of the time given to a workday, 80% is spent doing tasks with little to no value, and only 20% is spent on doing something important. So Dr. Neff, I don't want to put you on the spot, but because you're here for a brief time, I know when we were doing the debrief, we spoke about seeding time and seed time and harvest. So when we talk about time management, you know, how does that link to that biblical principle of seed time and a harvest?
Well, oh, I just lost my, can you see me? I just lost you.
We're still here, we can see you.
All right. Well, you know, time is one of those elements that that there's principle behind it. You know, most everything really, there's a principle or a law or a perspective, a foundation behind it, and so is time. And I think one of the really valuable lessons for me was in Genesis, I think it was Genesis 8, I think, when the Bible talks about seed time and harvest. You know, as long as we are living, there's seed time and harvest. And what I like about that principle is that it tells us that nothing happens overnight. You know, you hear of these get rich quick schemes, or become an overnight millionaire, or do this really fast and it happens. Well, it doesn't, because everything takes time. I love to plant. My father was a planter, and I think I inherited that from him. And in the pandemic, I've been planting inside my home using water, using hydroponics to plant. So in my kitchen, I have a garden, and everything is growing in water. And when those seeds are planted, there's a time between planting the seed, when it germinates, when it begins to bud and you begin to see the leaves come out, and when it actually grows to the time of bearing fruit. For some of my plants, like my peppers, for example, and for my tomatoes, they have to flower before the actual fruit is produced. And then, of course, once the fruit is produced, then there's harvest time. So time is one of those elements that we have to really bear in mind, that there's a principle behind it, and that we can't expect things to change overnight or happen very rapidly if we really expect it to come to fruition in the way it should. So we have to recognize that there's time for seeding and there's time for harvesting, but there's that time in between when we have to do other things. And depending on what it is you are seeding and waiting to harvest, you need to have time for prayer, you need to have time for reflection, you need to have time for whatever else you need to do. It depends on what it is you're seeding, so that you allow that thing to work itself through the process, so that you can reap the harvest in the end. And that, to me, is a great foundation for me. So when my day comes around and I have things I need to do during that day, I have to recognize that in order for some things to happen, I have to plan ahead. I may have to plan the day before, maybe a week before, so that today, Tuesday, I can get certain things done. For example, I am teaching tonight, so I had to prepare my lesson ahead of time. I had to send my students, since it's virtual, I had to send my students their participant guide so that they would be able to follow along my lesson. I had to do all that ahead of time, so that tonight, when I stand in front of my students, I can then produce the fruit that I'm wanting to produce, because I've put the time into planning and organizing and so forth. And it happens the same with any and everything that we do. And I pause.
Wait, Rachel, I see your hand went up, and Pastor Griffith was there nodding in agreement, and then Rev Samuel.
Yeah, there are a couple components that came into mind as Dr. Neff was talking. And it sounds like somebody's on. Getting feedback somewhere. The first thing that I thought of was what he needs to mute. Oh, there we go. The first thing that I thought of was, we're in this age of, you know, like they call it's microwave. You want everything instantly. And it has just become such a norm that everything has speeded up and you want everything now. So employers are demanding now, and you're thinking certain things, well, I should be able to do this in a day or in an hour. And so I love your points, Dr. Neff, that not everything is going to happen overnight. There is a process to things. And part of the process of seeding is nourishing and watering to allow things to grow. And I remember hearing of an example where bamboo was planted, and bamboo takes, I think, 5 years, if I'm right. But it may look like you're actually watering nothing. You just keep watering the ground, you're seeing nothing. And then all of a sudden, it seems like all of a sudden, in the 5th year, these things just shoot up. But you've been nurturing and watering these seeds for time that it needs to take. So yes, organizing, planning helps you focus, but it's also some of the time that needs to be spent when you seed things and see the harvest come then. So I totally agree with your points.
I think too, it also has, I mean, let's say when you do your part, there's some aspect that is out of your control, because some things were meant to happen within a particular time frame. And so we are responsible or required to do certain things within that time. And then the rest is left up to, if it's nature, depending if it's a seed, because the Bible says God makes all things beautiful in its time. So something, there's a time frame in which something is designed to grow, to blossom, and to be what it was designed for. And I think understanding where our part is, and knowing what, the other aspect, whether it's God or whether it's the fact that the principle need time for things to develop. So I like the fact that knowing that where our part is and where we allow things to mushroom and develop in the time that is necessary. Yeah, so I appreciate that fact as well. Thank you, Dr. Neff.
And Pastor Griffith. Unmute your mic. Unmute your mic, Pastor Griffith.
It's not time for you to rest yet. It's time for you to speak, so.
No, I tried pressing space bar, but it didn't work. Yeah, was I supposed to respond to Dr. Neff's statement? I missed something. I'm not hearing you.
Yes, we're asking you to respond.
Oh, well, I quite agree with her that we have to be deliberate and nothing happens by chance. And I'm quite certain that I will get later on to show you maybe a biblical perspective why we have to be deliberate. So I definitely support her position. You can't deny that. I'm not hearing, your mic is off again, Miss Moderator. Right.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, Pastor Griffith, now is a good time to talk about being deliberate, because tonight we want to talk about developing those good habits, how we compare time. And I believe it is written that it takes approximately 21 days to develop a good habit. And then there's this example of, persons kind of discouraging themselves and saying, well, oh my goodness, I want to do a degree program and it's going to take 4 years to do it. And in 4 years, I'm going to be 37. But consider that if you don't do the degree, you'll still be 37 in 4 years. So speak to us about being deliberate in time, Pastor Griffith.
Well, let me say that, and I want to probably base my argument on the Bible, how the Bible dealt with it. And I find that I'm just trying to understand what God meant when he says that I'm Alpha and Omega, trying to understand that. But perhaps since that he is who he is, I think that we can well learn from him its principles. And a good starting point would be what happened in Genesis. the first point that stands out to me is it seems as though chaos is the natural order. Chaos. All right. And when Almighty God himself came and started to create, or before he said, let me say that I want to contend that time creates space and space to work. And it's quite difficult for us to isolate the two, right? And it's a matter of how we use that space or that time. The Bible says in the beginning, God created. And let's observe what God actually did when he created. There's no doubt that God approached the creation of the earth in a very organized approach. And I want to say that he was deliberate. I mean, if you look at Genesis, you hear that, first of all, he caused light to appear, and then the steps follow. So he was obviously set on what he was doing, and he was addressing the disorder that existed. And we can relate to that because, like I said, time creates space, and there's a lot of disorder in our lives. And if you want to change that disorder, we have to be deliberate, just as God was in that purpose. I also noticed that the task that God was confronted with seems to have been massive. And I appreciate the approach that he took, in that he took the steps in bite sizes. That is, it took him 6 days to do this whole massive creation. I also noticed that he prioritized. In other words, he could not have put everything into one day, and and in putting the work in segments, he obviously would have decided the sequence. Because clearly, if I understand it correctly, it seemed as though that all that God was doing was preparing a world for Adam. I also discovered that he used the word yielding after its kind. In other words, the animals was also supposed to reproduce after the kind and the seed. I know what I see that? I see continuity and I see legacy. It comes back to where we are. And God was concerned about what we pass on. And therefore, like I said, his effort at that moment was calculated to achieve a specific purpose. Perhaps I should pause there.
And what you said reminds me of Abraham Lincoln's quote, "Nothing valuable can be lost by taking time, because it's in taking time and in being deliberate that you actually get the important things, those quadrant 2 things completed."
Somebody if we make cutting quickly, someone said, good work can't done in a hurry. I don't know what that means. Go ahead.
Exactly. Reverend Samuel, you want to add? Unmute your mic.
I appreciate so much what he's saying. I mean, being deliberate and intentional, having an idea of what is needed and calculating what needs to get done and the impact it should have on future generations. So I like the fact of being deliberate and intentional, because it guarantees whatever you start and wasn't able to finish is continued with another generation or other persons who can carry it further. It's like passing the baton. And sometimes, we understand in time what we're able to do and recognize if there is more, if there's need for improvement, and who should be the person to, add to that. So I like that whole, being deliberate and intentional. So I agree 100%, and I rest. That famous note.
Great. Are there any comments or questions before we move on to the next segment? No? Okay, fantastic. Rachel, I'm coming to you. So we discussed this whole concept of the compound effect. And if you, just leading on from being deliberate and intentional about how we use our time, can you explain the compound effect to us to progress or as we move forward with the rest of tonight's program?
Sure. So I'm not going to take credit for this. I actually read a book called The Compound Effect, and it was a fantastic book. I recommend it to any and everyone. It's by an author called Darren Hardy, and it was a really good. He even has like templates and stuff that that you can just download free once you buy the book. So it's a really good resource. It's very practical. So I'm not getting any commission from that, but the power in the book, I think, was just so simplistic that it struck me, because I am a simple girl, and anything like that, I take what the essence is. And so the premise behind the compound effect is that little things add up to massive results. And so little bits over time cause this compound effect. So I guess the easiest way to think about it is, if you exercise and you try to exercise 8 hours in one day, and then you don't do that again for another 2 months, probably because it'll take 2 months to recover, you're not going to see the effect of that, versus maybe a half an hour or even 15 minutes every day. You then start to see over time those effects compound. So just as Dr. Neff was saying about this whole like overnight success, you'll hear, oh, this person was an overnight success. And if you really ask them what was happening before this overnight success occurred, it was a lot of little, small, painstaking, sometimes what you think as insignificant steps to get you to that overnight success. And because there really is a lot involved behind the scenes to achieve anything. But consistency over time is really where the power is, and in terms of what I've seen, what I believe, what I've proven for myself.
Okay. So you want to share the example, or any of the panelists want to add before we go into the example that we want to propose to everyone else? Rev, Dr. Neff, Pastor Griffith? Okay.
I missed the question, actually. I missed the question.
I was asking if anyone wants to, I saw everybody nodding their head. I know we're in agreement. So I just wanted to know if anyone wanted to ask a question, a comment to what Rachel was saying about the compound effect.
I really like the idea of consistency, and that really is a concept that applies to just about everything that we do. If we are consistent in how we do it, the results would be tremendous. I think a lot of us fall short because we lack consistency, or we give up too quickly, or we get weary in well-doing. We get tired of doing the same thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. But I remember when I first started my my position at my church, I have two titles: Director of Education, Director of Children's Ministries, and I would offer these, what I thought, incredible education opportunities for the congregation, and the attendance was not as what I would expect, because I'm thinking I'm an educator, something everybody's going to flock to. I mean, this is free stuff, provided by the church, funded by the church, and so forth. And I remember speaking to my bishop, my late bishop, about it, and he said, Dr. Neff, just listen to me. He said, you just be consistent in what you do, and they will come. And even if one person shows up, then that one person, the blessing to that one person would be tremendous. And I was getting to the point where I was getting tired, weary that they weren't showing up to these wonderful opportunities. And eventually, after time, once I remained consistent, then people started coming and attending and enjoying and learning and so forth. And I always remember his words to me: be consistent. Just be consistent. You do your part. You be consistent, and not worry about how the others would receive it. And I love that concept of consistency.
So I affirm Rachel's position on appreciate that every little step. I mean, a building starts with the block. But there's another point I want to put in here, that if you read Genesis passages, the Bible said every day God looked at what he did and he was satisfied. And I want to just the word here of as we go on, how do we review, how do we evaluate how good we have done progressively? And I think that sets up a model that perhaps it's just about being consistent, but how do we identify the errors early? It's about management. In part of management, we have controls. How do you keep monitoring? How do you come back and correct? And I want to suggest that we can draw that principle out of the passage in Genesis, where every day the Bible says, and God saw what he did, and God was satisfied. Perhaps we can learn from that.
I think also is being aware of that procrastination and that tendency to hesitate. That sometimes when we're in the middle of something, or like you shared earlier, the person who says 4 years for degree and then I'll be 37, and then you are 37 and then you're without the degree because you procrastinated so long and you hesitated when you should have perhaps, take one step at a time and, and over a period of time with consistency, you would have been 37 with your degree, and not just 37 looking back and saying, I wish I had done. And so sometimes we look at the enormity of the project or the enormity of the goal, and we get overwhelmed and say to ourselves, I cannot do this because, and then we underestimate our abilities or over-exaggerate, not knowing if we just, consistently work towards, this goal or this project, like Michael Fence was saying, you would definitely have the overall success. So I think it's being aware of that, that tendency to procrastinate and to hesitate in the moment when you should actually take one step at a time and move towards your goal and see, 37, I have my degree.
Agreed. Pastor Henry writes, whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. Proverbs 13:11. So Rachel, back to you for our first icebreaker.
So before I get to the icebreaker, I want to just leverage what was just said, because that whole, paralysis that can happen sometimes where you're like, well, I don't have this in order and I don't have that in order. And when I get to this point, then I'll do it. Or I need to get A, B, and C, and then it will happen. And so in addition to having in what I've worked on and thought about, and a friend of mine we both sat down and came up with this in terms of consistent intentional action is one thing. So you're consistent, you're intentional, but you're taking an action. The other component is to take massive imperfect action, which means you can't wait for everything to line up in your mind. Sometimes it is just taking that step when you don't even feel ready to take the step. When are you ever ready anyway to take a step? And to really shove yourself off the ledge in some cases and take that massive imperfect step is really what's going to get you going. And you just take another, and you take another, and you take another. And that is going to get you in the direction. But if you think you have to figure it out or wait till you feel ready, realistically, you can be in that stuck position for quite a while.
Agree. Actually, I'm agreeing that from my own experience, I discovered that it is only by starting some things that the solutions actually evolve.
I think that's the essence of faith, and that's my thing. It's faith is an action. It is not just sitting and waiting. It is truly just taking a step, and then you're going to see. It's not that you're going to see and then, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense, I'll take this step. Majority of the time is take the step and then you'll see.
Yeah. Any comments or questions from the audience before we move forward? Okay, fantastic. Over to you, Rachel.
So we just wanted to give a little example visually of what this whole compound effect could look like. So I'm going to ask a question in terms of you're going to be given two options, one or two. So the first option is I am going to give you 1 cent. That's your starting point, 1 cent. And that 1 cent is going to be compounded every day for 31 days. That's your first option. Your second option is I'm going to give you $3 million in your hand right now. Which option would you take? 1 or 2? So you can even put it in the chat. We'll have some fun with it. Put it in the chat. Which option would you take? Are you going to take option 1, where I give you 1 cent and that will get compounded every day for 31 days, or you get $3 million in your hand right now? So you can put in the chat which option you'll take.
Rhonda, you want to comment? I see Rhonda, they're like, Oh, so Theodore asked, compounded at what rate?
Double.
And
So
it-
that cent would be double.
And Rhonda said it depends on how the compound works. So,
So
double.
by day 2, you'll have 2 cents. By day 3, you'll have 4 cents.
I feel like we have some accountants.
Yeah, I think people are at it now.
Rhonda, you wanted to make a comment? Feel free.
So I think you're saying it's compounded 100% every day.
Yeah, it's doubled. Every day it's doubled.
Okay.
No, I, as you rightly said, I am actually calculating because it's like $3 million one time as opposed to a cent. What is the compound rate?
31 days,
And
yes.
how is that calculated? What would you get at the end of the 31? Is it more than the 3 million? All these things have to be taken into account.
Jashima, I hope I got that right. It's for 31 days, you said, right, Rachel?
Yeah.
31 days. I think we have a lot of mathematicians and accountants.
Yeah, so we're gonna show you. Well, I'm gonna tell you a lot of people, I think if you present that, you're gonna be like $3 million versus 1 cent. It seems like the $3 million may be the one to, oh, Theodore is
It's
going
an
with,
answer. Yeah.
all right.
Theodore says the penny. Anybody will take the $3 million before Rachel continues? Will anyone take the $3 million in their hand? So if you invested the $3 million very well, it could be a better way to get it up front.
We've got investors now.
Heather, go ahead, Heather. You have to unmute. Jashima says the 3 million.
3 million for her. All right.
Heather, let me see if I can. Right, Heather, unmute your mic.
I would up for the 3 million.
The 3 million. Okay.
Right.
Right. So that's 2 for the 3 million.
All right. So let's show us. Let's give you the answer now, or show you the result. You may still opt for the 3 million. Who knows?
Only if you're getting a 10%, 100%, 200% at the end of the year.
So there we go. This really just goes to show that what starts out as something that could be a minuscule amount, the cent, at the end of 31 days, you've got $10 million in your hand. And really what you're looking at is throughout the course, that 3 million is actually going to start to decline because, hey, you're going to buy a car, you're going to buy a house, you're going to buy something. But that 1 cent looks like nothing. Even if you look up to day 22, at day 22, it's 20,000 versus the 3 million. At day 24, it's 83,000 versus the 3 million. And you may be thinking, have I really made the right decision here? It's a little bit over time. But when you hit day 28 and that 1.3 becomes 2.6, you're close to the 3 million now. But then look towards the end, you've got the day 29 is 2.6, day 30 is 5.3, and day 31 is at 10 million. And so sometimes it just appears, this is why people say, oh, they're an overnight success, but they went through day 1 to day 29, just consistently doubling their effort. And this is monetary because it's a fun example. But if you think of this in practicality, this is what consistency looks like. Yes, you could get the $3 million in your hand, but what if you did the consistency over 31 days? Look at what that would happen. So it's just a fun little exercise. But when I saw this, I was like, oh, that is really cool. And I'm an accountant, so I'm I'm like, this really, now you can see, because at day 23 it still looks like nothing compared to the 3 million. But you consistently take the steps, and by day 31. So this is why exercise is a good example too. I know for myself, I'll be very honest, if I eat good meals and healthy nutrition meals in 3 days in a row, I'm thinking, why can't I lose the 10 pounds right now? I've done 3 days. But but check 31 days later and you'll see, okay, maybe it's 2 or 3 pounds, but it's still going in the right direction. So that consistency. And I think as we are ingrained with this microwave age type mentality, of course, I'm thinking, and I've eaten 10 good meals. I should be a dress size down. But realistically, it took me a good little while to put on those 10 extra pounds. So you have to think about it in that light as well.
Yeah. So see, people are correcting themselves already and shifting our mindset. Shima says, I knew I should have went with the penny. So even that lesson, Rachel, panelists, Pastor Griffith, I don't know if Dr. Neff is still here, Rev Samuel, we make up our minds that we're going to do something, and we choose the quote unquote wrong decision, which ends up leading us in a loop as opposed to a straight direction. What's the value in sometimes going astray and what I like to call failing forward?
I remember at work, my boss, can't remember, something happened about flights. And he said, since he is not able to fly, he bought 2 model planes. And he liked flying. And someone says, but it can crash the plane. And he said, so I got 2. You see, if I crash one, I will learn not to do the same thing again. So we need not be intimidated or be afraid that we didn't get it right the first time. There is value in experience. And we should therefore not, my mother had a saying where she said, I pay day to learn. She's dead now. And to my mind, I understood was saying, listen to me, I may not have been so bright and it cost me a lot, but I'm going to make sure that I learn from what, you know what I mean? I paid the money there, I'm going to value what I have learned from it. So it is not bad when we make mistakes. It is how we respond to that mistake and how we use it to advance us.
Mm-hmm. Because we can allow it to paralyze us even more, or we can learn from it. So I love what Sasha said in terms of failing forward. Failure is a part of life, of growth, of development, of success.
Even baby teach you that.
Yeah, it is necessary. And I think that I was an achiever and I didn't understand, I put in the work and stuff, but I remember when I got to my qualifying exams for accounting, that was studying on steroids. I was like, what is this? This is insane. And seeing those results come back of failure, I was like, this is a shocker. But it made me rethink of, okay, what is my approach? Maybe this isn't working and maybe I need to tweak this. And there are other ways that I can study or when to study or how to study. And every failure, there's so many lessons in it that can truly, I think, catapult you forward. That failure can instead of paralysis, it can actually really move you forward in a significant way.
If I may come back responding to you about failure, there's something that I've observed about us sometimes as human beings, that we keep continuously making the same mistakes of failing. And I think that sometimes we need to step back and say, look, Rachel, David, Michael, the truth is I ain't get it right. You could tell me what I'm doing wrong or you can help me. But I find that we as human beings sometimes are so proud that we refuse to say, I want help. And we continue to do the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah.
I think the way I've heard it, and I think this is John Maxwell that said this, I could be wrong, where, you know, you can find someone and they'll say, I have 20 years of experience, but really it's 1 year of experience 20 times over. It's not that you have gleaned and gained, it's you've been repeating the same cycle for 20 years or 5 years. It is to dig deep and learn from each year, and that is the growth, the experience, the moving forward.
I think there is so much lessons we can learn for success in failing than just desiring success. But I think if we focus on the negative emotions and the loss that we suffered, we rob ourselves of the opportunity of seeing what we can learn to achieve more and succeed. So if we just not see that, okay, sometimes you lose in your efforts to succeed, but if you take time and to learn and observe what important lessons, then it gives you, greater insight as to how to do it better and how to, like I always tell some folks, okay, if I was baking a cake and someone, open the oven before the cake is fully baked, that cake will sink, and you can be so upset because you put all this effort put all the ingredients and all this effort to bake this cake, and before it can be fully baked, they open the oven before it's time, and you feel so devastated. But the idea is, they may have destroyed the cake, but not your ability to bake another one or a better one. So sometimes if you focus on just, the fact that the cake was destroyed, but my ability to bake another cake and even to improve on it is still there. So it depends on how we look at failure or look at how, so there are lessons we can learn from those experiences and really improve and be more successful and I rest.
In the chat, Kizzy asked, how can I space my time to get all the things I have to get done? And I think Pastor Griffith said we always want to space our time, but I like the idea of time provides space to do things. The problem is our space is too cluttered. Do you want to comment on that before we move on to visioning? How do I find?
So my question would be, if you're noticing, this is Kizzy, right?
Yeah.
If you're noticing clutter, I would then challenge you to the same way that you would go through a wardrobe to declutter. You can apply some of those same concepts to decluttering the time. In other words, is this something that is valuable then? Let's say you're taking out a dress that you love it, you wear it, it fits well, that's a keeper. If you're taking out another outfit that you haven't worn for 6 years and you're just hoping that one day you're going to fit back in there, maybe that's something to give away. And if you're to look at your schedule in a similar light, so we're going to declutter your schedule, what are those things? I think it comes back again to what are your areas of priority? So let's say family is an area of priority. Well, when you're decluttering, you're not going to get rid of all of the family activities, but maybe that is more zoned in. Something that maybe needs to come off of that schedule is maybe you don't even recognize how much time you're spending on social media. And so maybe to declutter, you allocate a half an hour and time yourself that you only spend that time on social media. If you're trying to fit everything into a schedule, there are certain things that, yes, probably need to be done now, but certain things can be delayed or certain things can be removed. The same way you declutter a closet, you're going to have 4 piles, a giveaway pile, a keep pile, a discard pile. So you segment a wardrobe in the same way you can segment your time. And I think that's a really beautiful example, just how you're talking about decluttering. Apply those concepts to your time the same way you would when you're trying to figure out what to do with your closet.
And just as this, our space that we have is always kind of limited, just like time. I don't want to say time, but space is limited. We can only do so much in a day and no more. And I think we need to remember that.
Mhm. So this is a good segue into
Was
vision.
that helpful, Kizzy? Did that answer?
I don't know if you want to comment, Kizzy, or you want to post in the chat.
Okay, if she could comment. But yeah, we can move.
While we wait for her to comment, Rachel,
Mhm.
I think this is a great segue into visioning. And so you had given us, she said, yes, thank you. You had
Oh, okay, cool.
homework to do last 2 weeks. So we're gonna leave it up to you now to take it from there.
So I don't know how many of you were on last week, but we had a little exercise for those of you who wanted to do it, where you would actually work through a week of time, and you would analyze your time from maybe 15-minute slots or half-an-hour slots and see really and truly how you were spending your time. So I guess I just wanted to get any feedback that you guys, if you did the exercise, what did you kind of glean from it? What did you see? What stood out for you? Was there anything that you were like, oh, that was interesting? So we're just going to give a little time here for any questions or answers or comments if you did the exercise during the week and what you learned from it.
Everybody goes quiet.
Nobody did their homework. So one thing I learned when I did it was that I definitely, I remember when I did it, I was in my corporate job, and I did not realize how much interruptions were coming into my day, and how, I think, Sasha, one of those statistics you gave on meetings was, a huge thing for me, because I was like, okay, are all of these meetings necessary, or are we just meeting for the sake of meeting? Is there value in the meeting, and could we condense it down maybe into half an hour or an hour versus letting it go on and on forever? So that was one of the things I noticed. And I noticed the level of interruption that was happening on a day. And so it made me be a little bit more forceful with my day to say, I'm going to shut my door for these 2 hours so that I could focus on this task. And then we have an open door policy. So I open up my door after that. So that, when my door is shut, I'm really like, please do not disturb me, because I need to get on with the task. So that was one of my notices, especially with interruptions, because I'm having to write down now, okay, so-and-so came in the office, and that was ended up being a half an hour. So that pushed my day back, kind of thing. So that was one of my bigger takeaways from that. And I became very time conscious.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways was that taking 10 minutes to plan your day makes a big difference. Sometimes you just come in and you're checking emails, and the emails just keep coming, right? The statistics say that you check your emails on average 55 times. You just keep going back to see. And so when somebody asks for something and it's urgent for them, all of a sudden it becomes urgent for you, and at the end of the day you haven't done what you said you wanted to do. So
Other people's,
right? But then when you take the time to sit down and plan, and you map it out on your calendar in Microsoft or Google or whatever, then all of a sudden you tell that person, well, I need to get back to you tomorrow on this because I'm doing something else. So that 10 minutes that I thought, oh, I don't have time, I would spend mapping out my day. And another thing I did, the stats say you're most productive between 9 and 12. I realized that I could get a lot done either early in the morning or late at night. And so I started going into work at 5. So while Kayla's swimming at the pool, I would go into work and get stuff done. I would take her to school, come back to work. And so even if I left work at 2 o'clock, then that's time now that we're spending in the car. And so the family time that you say is important, all of a sudden my day started looking differently, but I was more productive. And then by the time you got home, I had time to read a book. I had time to say, well, what are we cooking tomorrow? And so all of a sudden, just by sitting down, nobody's around and planning, you're able to create the space Pastor Griffin was talking about just now. So it's really interesting when you write it down. You think, well, I work 9 to 5, I can't manage that, but you can if you learn more about yourself and the way in which you can shift and prioritize to get things done.
Absolutely. I love the knowing when you work at your best, because it does give, you can then arrange other things in your day. I do work very early. Some days it's 5 o'clock in the morning, as you say, but I could put in 3 hours and accomplish so much. And then if I knock off at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I could go visit my family and I could spend a couple hours there, or I get an hour exercise or something that you have, when you're at your best energy wise, when you're at your best creativity wise, and you can structure a day like that. I mean, I guess now people have more flexibility with working from home and the circumstances that we're faced with. So I do actually see, whether it's workplace or otherwise, you can have a bit more flexibility and structure in your time.
I want to use the opportunity again to emphasize what I said earlier about God, that every evening he looked back and he looked at what he did and he was satisfied. And I say that he did it in bite pieces, today, then tomorrow, then whatever. So perhaps we need to live our tasks that we can perfect something, you know what I mean? And then at the end say, look, I am satisfied because I had a good day. Sometimes I'm working on the house and I would say to my wife, wow, I had a very good day. And I think that's what we need to do. How do we set up our work that we can handle so at the end we can say we had a good day?
But I think that assessment is just totally important. Assessing and reflecting. I've run projects and I tend to have a morning, 5 minutes. We all have a board, and you can have these boards now virtually, and everybody has a task. Okay, so we're set. By the end of the day, it could take 2 minutes to check in and say, okay, where are we at? Do we have any problems? Is there something that we need to deal with? And you can do that personally, as well as, did I spend the time doing what I had intended to do? Yes. Or, you know what, not so much. And what do I notice about that? Because then you can, once you notice, you give yourself that reflective time, you can tweak to say, you know what, if I just did this a little differently, I would get more time to exercise. So that is powerful in and of itself, just giving yourself that space to reflect.
Yeah. Rev, you want to comment?
Yeah, I also think, it's a lot to do with knowing what should be the focus for that day or for that period, and you can manage that focus. I also think it is, because of course we know what gets done sooner and what is important, so we know the time frame into plan. But we also have to add, or we could add to the equation, what is significance? And then we see the significance of things, so we know, okay, if I do what I do it today, how will it contribute to the better at tomorrow? Or what do I do now? How will it contribute to the better of the future? So also having that idea of this, how significant is this? And knowing, its significance, I know what it will add to the overall picture and the overall thing that needs to be done. So it helps me to approach things with a certain kind of a systematic and an idea of knowing, because then I can identify some things. It's okay, but it's not significant. It doesn't rise into the level where I'm required to give it so much time, because it will eat up all of my time and I will not get the overall thing done, or what's more is significant. So I think also looking at the significance of something and knowing by doing it, if it will improve it tomorrow and make the future better overall. So then I approach it with that kind of understanding, not just sooner, because to prioritize, I can just take it from the bottom of the list and put it on top. But it doesn't mean I have more hours in the day. It's the same time. So I just switch. So I just switch things around. But I also have to look at not just juggling, but knowing what's more significant and what will it add to the future and tomorrow. So that will help us, I think, to be guided in our efforts to manage.
I got the opportunity to raise in Ecclesiastes chapter 5:8 and verse 5. The latter part says, a wise man's heart discerneth both time and judgment. I'm not going to tell you that I can theologically break down and tell what it means this exactly, but I'll offer you a probable interpretation that it is wise if we would be aware of two things, of time, let me say in the sense that time that we have, and aware in the sense of its value and how it is used. I somewhere said that time is also like a vehicle in which we are traveling, and it will one day put us off. And don't care what we've accomplished or what we've gathered on that train, we will not be able to take it with us. Time will put us off. And here's the point, that whenever our journeys end, somebody is going to judge how we perform. Either we're going to ask ourselves, have I done well? Somebody who was there before will probably say he did well, or somebody who will come tomorrow again will evaluate me. But we know for certain the Bible says that God, we will all have to give an account of God for the things that we have done. So the Bible is just saying the wise man discerneth two things. He's very much aware of time and is aware that what he does, he'll be judged by himself, somebody, or God. I pause.
Great. So I want us to look at visioning, Rachel, panelists.
I think that's actually a great, what Pastor Griffith said is a great segue into visioning, because visioning or vision is closely tied to legacy. And I just want to kind of step back and give just a bit of context in terms of how I would generally teach it in terms of what purpose is. So if you think of purpose, purpose is the big why. Why am I here? What am I doing? What is my heart's desire? What do I feel led to do? That's the big purpose. Coming down from there is the vision. And again, this is a space of not how do I do A, B, and C. Vision is what would I like? What would I like, but what are some of the things that really inspire me, get me going? What would I like to see coming out of my life? And this is why I say it's tied so closely to legacy, because it's not just what would I like to do. Yes, that's part of it, but it's who do I aspire to be in this? What are my values? What are my character traits? Who am I being? And allowing yourself that space to say, what would it be without restriction, without constraint, without limitations? What could it look like? And totally giving yourself that freedom to write without judgment. What could it be? What could life be for you? The how is then the action point that comes after the what could it be, and to give yourself that freedom to say it, to write it, to design it. And so I would also, how do I say this, caution you a little bit in terms of sharing your vision with any and everybody, because you don't want people that are just gonna shut you down like, that's a lot of rubbish. But to give yourself that space to design that. And so one of the things that I love to do is create, and I do want to write. I enjoy writing. I enjoy that space. And so part of my vision is to write a book, and part of the vision is to have a caregivers association, whether it's just caregivers or Alzheimer's related, because it's something that I have got experience in, and it's something that I can see benefit in others. Part of my vision is to have a huge consulting company that helps people transition. So these are kind of things of the what. The how you get there is totally is now then taking that, like, let's take the nugget of writing and then breaking that down into how can you make that happen. But the vision is defining the what. And you can have a vision in multiple areas. So sometimes it's helpful to break it down. Okay, what's my vision for family? What's my vision for spirituality? What's my vision for career? What's my vision for my household? And so you can chunk it down in those segments so that it's not like, what's your vision? That you can actually give yourself some space to think about in categories is sometimes quite helpful. So that's one of the areas. And if you would, I think that sometimes it's good to spend even a few minutes writing down some of these things. So I would actually challenge you in the next couple minutes to list maybe 3 to 5 things that you would really like to do in your lifetime, and put it in the chat. Just put some of those things that pop into your mind that you may have dreamed about, that you have desires. What are some of those things, that 3 to 5 things that you can think of that you would really like to accomplish or see or have happen in your lifetime?
So while they think about that and it's in the chat, we have a scenario. How do you deal with interruptions to your schedule, especially when those interruptions can harm relationships if not attended to? Example, a family member wants a portion of my time that I have dedicated, to study for my degree.
So it's interesting the way that it's phrased. A family member wants a portion of my time. And so it is, I don't know the circumstances, but someone else's emergency cannot necessarily become yours. And it's not to dismiss the business or dismiss the interaction, but you've also got your dedicated time for studying. So even if it's sharing the parameters to say, hey, I've really got this time that I've allocated to study, and how about we arrange a time, once a week or something that I can dedicate to you, so that it's not necessarily breaking your flow of interruptions, because one interruption leads to another interruption. Ooh, we have some responses coming in.
Pastor Griffith, Reverend Samuel, you wanna?
Well, we have already said in another time that we have to balance, and there are important things that need to be balanced. But what we must emphasize here is that we still have our own life, and we've got to determine how we manage our own life, because there's some people who are takers. They will take and take and take and take, and then you will have no time for yourself. So what is important is to make sure that my family get that portion that is theirs, but I also have me to deal with. It is unfortunate, would be unfortunate if we end up giving, and then be sorry that we give and sacrifice ourselves.
I think we have to also weigh and measure the significance of that, and talk with our family member and see, is it something that someone else could do? Because I may have to dedicate, or for someone to assist. And if it is something that could wait, can we do it another time? So it's also giving them the idea that you are, you're willing to do whatever is, they're asking, if it's within your power to do, but maybe it cannot be done this time, unless it is something that, that rises to the level where it needs to be, where it's urgent, right? So I think it depends on what the situation is at that particular time, and you see if you can delegate it to somebody else, or if you can wait for another time, or help them to understand, where I'm at, what's happening right now, and then see. So if it rises to the level of urgent, then you know it requires an immediate response. If it is something that could be done at another time or could be done with somebody else's assistance. So all those are ways you can, approach situations like that, I think. So they will feel so that they will know you are willing to support them. Yeah, but then looking at if it is necessary for that time, it could be done later or someone else can help with it. Yeah.
So we had a few brave souls willing to be vulnerable. Benjamin wants to launch a business. I was actually going to ask him what type, but I said, let me leave Rachel to take the lead on this. Rhonda wants to own and operate a mini mart in a rural or urban area. And someone wants to have their own school. And so it is
Oh, that's Rhonda as well. Yeah, she wanted a preschool. Benjamin, if you get a second, just tell us what kind of business you want to launch. That would be really interesting as well.
And for those who are too shy, please make a note because Rachel has some questions. And I actually wanted to ask Rhonda if she didn't mind us putting her on the spot, Rachel, so that you could use her to walk through the visioning. Rhonda, are you in a position to answer questions that Rachel might pose to you just so others can see the example? I'm asking Rhonda because I know her.
Okay.
She's not shy. I wouldn't put anybody else on the spot like that. In the meantime, Betty says, I want to own a rental space for parties and gatherings.
Awesome.
Sure, no problem.
Different Rhonda for the preschool.
Yeah.
Wasn't the same Rhonda, but Rhonda says, okay, so Rachel, over to you.
Awesome. Okay, so this is Rhonda that wants to own and operate a mini mart in a rural or urban area.
Yes, please.
Awesome. Okay, so tell me a little bit about your vision and what has driven this vision of yours.
From the time I was very young, I was in sales. I would say from around 3 because my father came from the country, and although we lived in the town, he would still go up because they would sell in the market on weekends. And from the time I was 3, I was always with him selling, and I enjoyed the cashing and having people around me and interacting with the customers and so forth. However, later on, as I grew, I was always into numbers. So I just figured at the time that I would do something that is in numbers, and I became an accountant. And I did that for almost 20 years. But while doing that, I have always done sales on the side because wherever I worked, I would look to do bulk buying for the staff and so that everyone, could benefit and share and stuff like that. So, and right now where I am, I'm no longer in accounting, I'm in operations now, and I still do that. And it is something that has always been on my heart to do, not so much in a town area, but more in a rural area, because sometimes when you look at certain areas, after you pass all the big supermarkets, there is not a lot of places for people to go at reasonable prices. And there's always this misconception because you're in the country, the prices have to be so exorbitant, which to me is unfair for the people that are living there. So it is with that mindset it was dormant for a while, and it came back up recently because of the directions the lessons I have been learning, the directions I have been pulled in. I'm like, okay.
This is coming up again.
Yes.
So it sounds like it's an absolute natural bend. Like I appreciate who you are, because the people that would come in an organization and just do that naturally, and those of us who are not naturally inclined that way are like, oh sure, you're going to organize and get bulk buying, and oh, this is great. So it's really a value add to your to whoever you work with, and it seems to be something that you're naturally inclined to and passionate about. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. And the thing is, I don't do it. I've never done it to make any money off of it. I mean, when I own my mini mart, the intention obviously will be, to sustain myself. But over the years, I have always done it because I have a big family. I had, 5 children. And at the time, for me, it was like bulk buying made sense. And if I realized I was benefiting, why not share it so other people as well can benefit? So it has always been to assist people. And I like to see people happy. And yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say is the, I guess, burning desire for you to start something like this? If you were to give this a number in terms of level of importance or level of priority or level of desire, what number would you give this on a scale of 1 to 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say a 9, because to be honest, if I had the finances whereby I could start or like now, I would.
Awesome.
Rachel, before you continue, I just want everybody to know that even though we're using Rhonda as the example, that you should answer the questions as well. And so I just want to go back to the chat quickly. We have about 15 minutes before we end. Daron says, Benjamin clarified, he wants a small cafe serving breakfast and lunch. Daron wants to become a pastor. We have so many pastors on this program, Daron. We hope that by next week you would have connected with Reverend Samuel, Pastor Griffith, Pastor Henry, and we have a number of other pastors who join us from week to week. So there you go. Mentorship is very near. He also wants to own an ice cream business and he wants to start a family. Zahara, I hope I pronounced that correctly. She wants to empower orphans, provide housing, counseling, and schooling for them. So everyone, even though you may not be confident enough to contribute on the program, write it down and answer the questions as Rachel uses Rhonda as the example. Reverend Dr. Roger Samuel has to leave us, but thank you for joining us tonight, Rev. We look forward to seeing you next week when we support the youth. Over to you, Rachel.
Okay, so as Rhonda is here talking, you guys that are watching on, there are just a couple observations. So you can see that Rhonda is very passionate about this. So if I were to dig down a little bit more into Rhonda's why, she has a good why, not a good why, but she has her why around it. She knows what is igniting this passion. She's got her experiences and stuff. Then you'll notice that I've asked her to confirm and clarify what level of importance is this. Now that is significant because if she said it's a 2, it's not necessarily something that I would necessarily continue to pursue to say, let's break this down into a how to do this component. But she's given me a number of 9. So now I think it's, okay, this is important. She knows her why behind it. She gets excited by it. She's passionate about it. She's also clearly defined that she doesn't do it to make the money, but if she were to own her own mini mart, it would not just be for the love of it. It would be, yes, she enjoys it. It's something that fulfills her. It's something that satisfies her. And now she'd be turning it into a money-making venture. So back to you, Rhonda. If I were to ask you now, what do you think would be one step that you would take now to explore the possibility of creating this beautiful mini mart? What would that first step be, you think?
I other than, which is what I have done before, which is praying about it. My first step will be to, I guess, 1, identify a potential place or area, and then is to wrap my head around financing.
Okay, so you said one of the first steps would be to identify a potential place or area. Do you have anywhere in mind, or would you now have to think about where could potentially work?
Well, currently I recently moved, because I was back in town and I recently moved back in the country.
Okay.
I love the country. So it will be something close to home.
Awesome. Okay, so we've now got the the general area. So maybe that is a starting point to research what are the opportunities around there. You also mentioned finances.
Yeah.
So given that you're in the finance area, what do you think could be the first step on the financial side that you could do to explore the possibilities of creating the mini mart?
Well, initially I used to always thought that I needed to have the finances,
Mhm.
or if I didn't have it, to get a loan and be able to service that loan. But in recent times, to be honest, I have even started of thinking of in having someone invest in the business. That is something I've actually started thinking of recently,
Mhm.
in terms of looking for an investor. Um, but yeah,
Okay, so we're gonna go with your intuition and we're gonna go on that thought process.
Yeah,
What would
before we
and
continue again, Rachel, Pastor
Sure.
Griffith raised his hand.
Mike.
Oh,
Yeah. What? Now, earlier we spoke about God dividing the thing, and I mentioned little bites, and we talk about descent and how it accumulates. And it might be interesting to find out how long did Wanda have this this vision. And I'm all the while I'm thinking about scale, how big, how much money. And would it be really nice if Wanda could start up a little one shop, one door, 5 items, something? I mean, doesn't it so like I remember when we were building our church once, we built it in stages, and one of the parts I said, look, we built a toilet first, then we went to the mess room, but the general sanctuary is bigger, costs more money. And I said, let's go into the sanctuary, the mess room, because out of sight, out of mind. And if we can get the people in the little mess room, then we will be concerned. It ain't done yet. We gotta get it finished. Perhaps, could it be that Wanda wants the big mini mart with all the big up things, and that's why she's taking so long? That's a question.
no, but you are quite right. you you are right. Because I actually took note of what you said at the very beginning in terms of the bites, taking the small bites, and in going through the process, I do see the wisdom in it, because that is not how I was thinking before. I was thinking that, okay, mini mart, a structure, how it should look and all of that, as opposed to, okay, starting something small and developing it. So you are quite right.
And if I add quickly, I remember sometime I left work one day, and I decided to buy a popcorn machine. And I said, but if I get a popcorn machine, I'm gonna get a generator. And then eventually I realized that if God I know I need transportation to take me around, or I'm gonna pay all my money. And I remember once somebody said, wow, that popcorn man stepping up. Just like the coolie man. I pause.
so what are your thoughts on that, Rhonda?
Well, yes, as I said, I have been taking, as I say, copious notes.
Mhm.
And I do have a lot of food to chew on, because it has. I'm glad I came tonight. I must say, let me say first, because it has, as they say, ignited a spark that was kind of that was going down and coming back up, going down and coming back up. But I think now is the time.
So there's one thing that you said there that stood out, and that is food to chew on, because sometimes we can chew for quite a long time. And I'm going to try to shove you along a little further, in the sense that you were already on track when you talked about So your gut feeling is maybe there's an investor. And so you've also said maybe it's not starting with the biggest thing in mind. However, you could look and see ultimately, so vision is broad and then it comes in. So the vision I have for my company is broad, but I know I'm not there.
Right.
I am taking the little steps to build and grow and glean and learn as I go. And I think what you have is that natural ability that you've used within every organization that you have been in, that you are sourcing, you're checking prices, so that you've got down packed. What we don't want to stop you now is chewing. We don't want you to keep chewing. We want you to start taking what could be an action that you think, whether it is an investor or a loan or whatever finance may be needed, what would be a step along giving you insight in that direction of what may be needed to put in place?
That's a question, statement.
Yep. What do you think you would need? What would be a step to move you forward in that direction? Because that was the first question that came to your mind, and I didn't think I have enough money to, once I get the financing in place, was your statement. So the finance component, I think, could be your sticking point.
I think what I actually need to do is to actually action by putting pen to paper and actually doing out a proposal, of what I need, what is required, and actually follow it. So I think it's actually to do action, to action as opposed to just having it in my head.
Absolutely.
And Wanda, when you start, Wanda, people tend to see you even, and I guess I'm probably preaching to whoever, the converted, but clearly when people see you doing things, people can help you, or people say, look, sister, you got that. Look, I have this place. Why don't you let us come together and merge?
Right.
So there's no doubt that when you start, you get exercise and you also get publicity.
Yeah.
So Rhonda, what I would also say is that you have a beautiful skill set already. And I think that when you say putting pen to paper, I think you should be leveraging all of your accounting experience, all of the experience that you've gleaned through business to business, saying, what could this look like? The numbers can intimidate most people, but numbers are not going to intimidate you because you're accustomed to numbers. And in this case, it is a number. You don't have to personalize it. You can just start taking those steps by writing it down. I think that, people sometimes, just because you don't know the information, can stop you from doing anything. And you think it is more than when you actually put pen to paper down. And you're shocked to say, oh, well, I could, okay, so if it were 10,000 square feet, it would cost X. But if I did 3,000 square feet, that could be the start and I could expand.
Right.
But if you having the research, as you have rightfully said, you've come to your own answers. They're there. And you can see this, you already have some action steps. So your action steps would be, 1, you're going to identify some places within the area. You already know where you've moved to. You're now going to start looking at that area with a new lens to see what your options and possibilities are. And your second step is actually to document what something like this may cost and look like. So this is your proposal and putting pen to paper. So you have your vision of owning this beautiful mini mart in a rural area. You have your why behind it. You have the fact that you don't see why, because if it's in a rural area, things should cost more, that you've worked it every which way in a business and you've benefited so many employees already. And now you can translate this already beautiful skill into your own business. And so you have those 2 actions as your first step out, your massive imperfect action to work on. So I'm going to ask you what I would ask Sasha that would annoy her. when do you intend to start this, and what are your dates around working on this? When are you going to work on it?
Well, I'm actually home this week.
Oh, look at
Yeah.
that. So you're home this week. So what,
Yes.
how many hours are you going to dedicate to it, and what is your goal?
Okay, so realistically, I would say I should have something documented by Friday.
Okay. So we're going to hold you accountable. I don't know where you're going to put this information, but you're going to have to be accountable to somebody to say what you've done by Friday. Where can she do this, Sasha?
She can send it to, she could send it to me, don't worry. But Theodore says, send us your investment proposal, Rhonda. So next week is the youth program, Rhonda, and you and Dominic are invited. And so you were supposed to put in that program that the proposal was finished.
Yes.
And speaking of finished, the time has just gone. Time management, right? We need to wrap up on time. So Rachel, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Pastor Griffith, thank you so much for your words of wisdom. Everyone, thank you for being on the program and just seeing how you can vision and how visioning and time management leads to legacy. I just want to go back to a quote we had last week from Pastor Henry. If a person can visualize their legacy, they can make choices towards managing time. If a person can visualize their legacy, they can make choices towards managing their time. I'm going to let the panelists give us their last thought on time management, and I'm going to invite you to next week's program. We usually have our program every 2 weeks. But next week our youth are on, so invite your kids, your kids, the youth, the panelists are between the ages of 17 and 21, but we invite the young and the young at heart. They're going to be speaking to us on the social media's impact on youth, and it's hosted by Chelsea Best. And then we come back with wealth management on February 16th. So Rhonda, when you have that proposal, we're now going to go into wealth management, and we're going to help everyone build shatterproof families, one brick at a time. Rachel, Pastor Griffith, and our host, Minister Pastor Henry.
I'm going to steal this from Pastor Henry. I'm just going to say, because I see this coming up each week now, where there is this tug of war between I want to do something to advance myself, but the obligation to my family. And I would just say that you also have to find some time to support yourself, and to have a support system around, and time to reflect, time to rejuvenate. So please factor that in. Given these times that we're living in right now, it's even more critical.
Yeah, time, we always have a certain, we will always have a certain time. And time, like I say, can be considered to be a vehicle in which we travel. And sooner or later, it will put us off. At the end, somebody will ask us, how good have we done? We will ask ourselves, how good have we done? But there are certain things that cannot be taken with you. Those are oftentimes intangibles. So I need to find a way to leave something that will be of benefit to someone. But while I'm traveling, I need to be able to enjoy my journey. And I think that we must remember that time creates space to do things. And it seems to me, I repeat, that it is more so the intangibles that are more important. Wanda will have her business, but you know what? It'll bring money, it'll support her family, but in the meantime, she helped the people in the community, and she will leave a legacy that she have helped somebody.
It's my turn. Great program. I think it was Albert Einstein who said the only reason for time is so that everything doesn't happen at once.
All right.
So thank you very much. If everything were to happen at once, there would be no need for day 1, day 2, day 3, in the period of creation, even to the 7th day. And God shows us that there is a time for everything.
That's right.
And so I'm thank the panelists and the host this evening for taking us through this wonderful program, and look forward to seeing you next Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. as we join with the youths and continue to enjoy these nuggets of truths as we continue to live our lives. Thank you very much, and the Lord bless you. Have a wonderful evening.
Good evening. Bless you all. Have a good day.
Good evening.